Good evening. Once again, this is Jeanette Alomia, Director of Guidance and Testing for the Huntington Schools. Tonight, you're in for a treat. You will you'll receive great information and in-depth information and step-by-step instructions and guidance on how to complete the Fafsa, which is the federal application for student aid. Free application for student aid. That's what the Fafsa stands for. Tonight, we have Julie Van Nostrand. She's a financial aid counselor at Suffolk County Community College. She's had many, many years of helping students and families obtain their financial goals so that students can obtain a college education. And so she is instrumental to the institution of Suffolk Community College, and she's been a great help for us here at Huntington Guidance. Now that your senior has applied to various colleges, some of you might have received some acceptance letters. You might be encouraged to complete the Fafsa, etc. So this is the right time to gain knowledge and some good insight from Julie in terms of how to complete the Fafsa, and just to avoid common mistakes that anybody might face during this process. So what Julie's going to do tonight is that she's going to go step by step, item by item, and assist with the completion of the Fafsa. She's going to share her screen, and then at the end, we will have a question and answer section where you can pose your question in the chat box. You can do this, you can pose your questions in the chat box throughout the presentation, and we will definitely get to those questions at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and you can take it away, Julie. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so let me make sure I have the right thing here. Hello, everyone. My name is Julie Van Nostrand. I am a financial aid counselor at Suffolk County Community College. And I'm delighted to be here. And I want to thank Ms. Alomia for inviting me to participate tonight. So I'm going to try and get to my screen. Oh, here we go. Okay, good. All right. So I just wanted to let you know that my colleague will be joining us. She's having a few computer issues right now, but she will be joining us, and she's going to be handling the chat. But if there are any other questions or anything, we'll be happy to stay on. I'll be happy to stay on and answer whatever questions that you have toward the end. Also, I'm going to put my email address in the chat so that this way, if you have questions that are of more of a personal nature, we can certainly, set up a time, all right, we can communicate by email, or we can have a Zoom meeting on our own to talk about those questions so that this way you get the answers that you need. Okay, so before we start anything having to do with Fafsa, one of the most important things and one of the best things is creating an Fsa ID and password. And why do I say the best things? Because this will give you the opportunity to transfer your data, your financial data, right from the IRS directly into the Fafsa. All right, so that's really useful because what happens is a lot of times students or parents, when they're completing the Fafsa, they accidentally put in an extra 0, or they forget to put in a 0, or they misread the question, so they answer it incorrectly. And anything like that is going to delay your Fafsa from being processed correctly and successfully. I could think of numerous students who I've met over the years who have come into my office really dumbfounded. They couldn't figure out why they weren't getting any financial aid, or why their financial aid was different than it was the year before. And when we would kind of explore it a little bit more, it was easily identified when, you put in an extra zero and it looks like now you're making, 3 times the amount of money you made the previous year, or there are different, just different number of people in the family, different number of people in the household. So all of a sudden, those things are really going to change the complexion of your financial aid award. So in being able to transfer the data immediately right from the IRS right into your FAFSA, it really, first of all, it streamlines the process dramatically. It helps you avoid errors. And also, if you are selected for verification, verification is a process by which the federal government tasks financial aid offices with, okay, if student X did their FAFSA, we're selecting them for verification, which means we would like for them to produce the documentation that they used in order to complete their FAFSA. So with that, if you have already transferred your data directly right from the IRS, there's no reason to verify it. They know it's correct. So that makes the process go that much more quickly. Okay, so important things about your FSA ID and password. Number one, parent and student need to have an FSA ID and password. Now, if you're in a 2-parent household, both parents do not need to create one. Just one parent needs to create one. But the parent and the student have to create separate, completely different FSA ID and passwords with usernames, and they're going to ask you for the answers to 4 challenge questions. I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you write down the answers to the challenge questions. Make sure that you have a completely separate email addresses, completely separate usernames. I just met with a parent today who accidentally started answering the questions as if it were for her instead of for her student. And now she can't sign the FAFSA because the FSA ID does not work. Excuse me. So it's troublesome. It's time consuming to have to redo this FSA ID and password. But in a way, it's a good thing because this is your personal electronic signature. It also has the opportunity to be easily, your personal information could be easily accessible to people who might not have your best interests at heart. So they're going to make this, or try and make it, as hack-proof as possible. That's why it's so difficult to get an FSA ID and password or try and re-get one. You can't really recreate one because it's always going to be tied up with your social security number. So a lot of times people will say, oh, I'll just create a new FSA ID. If you have the same social security number, it's always going to revert back and say, oh, wait, there's an FSA ID and password already associated with this social security number. We need to go back and redo that one. We need to get that one back up and running because you can't just recreate a new one. So if you find yourself in a situation where things have gone awry and you don't have all the data, you want to go to Manage My FSA ID. And that's where you could, perhaps redo your password or hopefully retrieve your username, things like that. Creating an FSA ID and password, that's the first link here, the first tab there. As I said, strongly recommend paper and pencil, write it down, keep it in a safe place. You will use it, you will need it from year to year, all right? So when you do have to do your FAFSA for the following year, you will use it. All right, so now I've transitioned to the studentaid.gov website. You can also go to fafsa.ed.gov, and it'll take you to the same place. And we are going to start the FAFSA. Now, one of the things that I need to let you know is that since this is a mock demonstration, if you will, I'm going to be using names that may or may not be familiar. I'm also going to be, making up social security numbers and phone numbers and things like that as I go, just to show you every screen and help you understand what it is that they are asking when you are completing the FAFSA. So I'm not going to be able to sign this FAFSA using my Fsa ID and password because these are not going to be real people. So unfortunately, we're going to have to kind of use our imaginations when we get to that spot. Okay, so we're going to start here where it says new to the FAFSA process. All right, so if I clicked here where it says I am the student, then it'll ask me for my Fsa ID and password. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go here. All right. And now I'm just going to plug in information. So as I said, you may or may not recognize some of these names. Okay. And we're going to say Luke was born on Valentine's Day, 2001. Okay, important piece here. They are asking you, I would definitely click here to show the social security number. They are asking you to just make sure that all of this information is correct. If you use the wrong social security number, if you are off by 1 digit, you will have to redo the FAFSA all over again. So word to the wise, make sure you have that right number handy, okay? And remember, this is the student's information. This is not the parent's information. So this is just a disclaimer screen. So you want to take a look at it. And when you're ready, you can accept. Now, this is a screen that can be one of the first pitfalls of completing the FAFSA. Right now, there are 2 FAFSA applications open simultaneously. That's because we are in the middle of the 2021 academic year. So if your student is planning to come to the college or go to college next January, a month from now, they would complete the 2021 FAFSA. If your student is going to be graduating from high school in June of 2021 and beginning college, attending college in the fall of 2021, you're going to want to do the 21-22 FAFSA, which just opened back in October. It opened October 1st, all right? So since our student, our pretend student, Luke, is going to be graduating from high school in June, and he's planning to start college in the fall, we're going to do the 21-22 FAFSA. Okay, creating a save key. Again, here's a place where you want to write down the save key. The save key is used when the student and the parent can't do the FAFSA together. I strongly recommend that the student and the parent do the FAFSA together. Because it's going to ask a lot of questions that the student may or may not know. When did parents get married? When did parents get divorced? What was their birthday? What's their social security numbers? So it's best if the both parties are there together, right? Because you can just answer the questions right away. If that's not possible, what you want to do is you want to get to the FAFSA that's the latest and the greatest version of the FAFSA. So that's why you create a save key. So you want to go right back to where the parent or the student may have left off, okay? So I usually tell students, just put in your first name, whatever save key you use, write it down so that this way you know what it is. This is just an overview of the various sections of the FAFSA. And it's ironic that I have it here where it says, can I save my FAFSA if I can't finish it? It might be a good idea to save it, go up here and click save every few screens. Power outages happen, things happen. You don't want to have to sit around and redo the whole thing. So I would say do that. Okay, again, here we go. We are looking at Luke's information. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to this banner. spanner right now says student information, all right? That is going to change. That is going to flip between student, parent, back to student. So you want to make sure that you are answering the questions for the party for whom they are asking, right? So for the student. Now, in the case of Luke, if Luke has a middle name or a middle initial on his social security card, you want to put that in, all right? So we're going to leave that blank. We're going to say, no, Luke does not have a middle name. So we're going to leave that blank. Again, take a look at that social security number. You don't want to have to redo this entire FAFSA. Okay, so now we're going to put in Luke's email address. Oops, spelled demo wrong. And I also wanted to point out that my colleague, Dawn, is in the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to chat. Send them into the chat. She'll be fielding some of the questions. Then if there are any other questions for at the end, I'd be happy to stay on and help you there. Oh, so it doesn't look like they match. So let's see what I did wrong. Let's try it one more time. Okay, hopefully that worked. Yes, okay, good. And we're just going to make up a phone number for Luke. Okay. Luke's address. So again, if you are of a certain age, you may or may not recognize this address. And we're going to say that Luke lives in Riverhead. And his state is New York. And his this screen is setting up a conversation having to do with state aid. I strongly encourage when you are done with the FAFSA to go right on and complete the TAP application. TAP is state aid. FAFSA is federal aid. So a lot of times students are eligible for both. So you would be eligible for some extra money by applying for TAP as well, all right? So there are certain regulations around receiving TAP. One of them is residency in New York State. So we'll say yes, that Luke has lived in New York for at least 5 years. These are the options for the citizenship question. So yes, we're gonna say Luke is a citizen. So now they're just telling you, hey, by the way, don't forget, you might be eligible for some state aid. So don't forget to do your state application. And this is great because if you have the opportunity to go from the FAFSA right to the TAP application, a lot of the information that you've already put in, the name, address, all that stuff, would get migrated right over into the other application. So you don't have to sit around and retype that. Excuse me. Okay, now this screen sometimes trips some students up. So let's look at it pretty carefully. Again, we're here with this banner with student information. What will your high school completion status be when you begin college? All right, so we said that Luke is planning to graduate in June. So we're going to say that he is going to have a high school diploma. What college degree or certificate will he be working on? So a lot of times, and depending on where the student is planning to go, you might select first bachelor's degree if you are going to an institution or planning to go to an institution that indeed confers bachelor's degrees. In our case, for Suffolk, since we are a community college, we only confer associate's degrees. So you want to answer this question based on where you think you might be heading. Are you heading to a school where you're going to complete a 4-year degree, or likely starting off at a place like Suffolk where you'd get that associate's degree and then go on? So we're going to say that's what Luke is planning on doing. He is going to try and get an associate's degree first and then move on. Will you have your first bachelor's degree before you begin? A lot of students misread this question and they answer yes. Yes, I want a bachelor's degree. That's not what it's asking. It's asking, do you already have a bachelor's degree when you plan to start school? If you answer yes to this question, you will automatically make yourself ineligible for aid, because once you have a bachelor's degree, you are no longer eligible for federal grant aid. You may be eligible for a loan, but you're not eligible for a grant. So you want to answer no to this question, okay? What will your college grade level be, right? So we know, like I said, Luke is he's just finishing high school. So he's gonna choose never attended college first year. Okay, are you interested in being considered for work study? Work study is part of federal financial aid. There are criteria that you have to meet in order to be eligible for work study. It's right now about $13 a week. An hour, $13 an hour. It's about 15 hours a week. I know in our college, there are opportunities to work off campus. Now, I do not know how that is working right now with respect to COVID, but I know in the past we did have off-campus opportunities and on-campus opportunities. So for example, you might find yourself working in the library, or you might work in the cafe, and they would work with your schedule, of course, and you would have a nice job. And rather than the federal government paying the college your financial aid, the federal government would be paying you as part of your overall financial aid package. So you could say yes to this. It doesn't automatically mean that on day one, as soon as you hit the campus, you're going to be working. There are a few other steps that have to happen before you actually are placed in a position. But if you think you might be interested, you could say yes. So we're going to say yes here. You can always turn it down later. Okay. Are you male or female? So we're going to say Luke is male. Okay. Most male citizens and male immigrants must register with selective service. So selective service is the draft. Now, there hasn't been a draft in the United States for over 50 years. But if you decide to answer no to this question, again, you will, and this is for male students only, you will be automatically ineligible to receive federal financial aid. So let's just play this out a little bit. Are you registered with selective service? Luke is going to say, no, actually I'm not. Okay. Do you want us to register you? So as I said, if you say no, that will automatically make you ineligible for aid. So we're going to say yes. Yep. Luke, please register me with selective service. Okay. Driver's license information. This is a completely, up to you kind of thing. You do not have to put in your driver's license information if you don't have one, or if you do not want to. Completely up to you. As it says, if you have one, some students do not have a driver's license. So if you do not wish to put this in, you can leave it blank. It will have no bearing whatsoever on your financial aid status. So we're just going to leave it blank. This screen is setting up the conversation about dependency status. So I meet a lot of students who come in, or in the past have come in, who talk about, well, I'm on my own and I don't live with my parents, and I have my own place and I pay my own insurance and I pay my own rent, and I know I have contact with them, but I'm no longer, I'm not dependent on them anymore. Well, that might be true in the larger world, but in the world of financial aid, you are considered a dependent student until you are age 24. Believe it or not, for state aid, you are considered a dependent on your parents if you meet certain criteria until you are age 36. So dependency, it goes a long way in terms of in the number of years, right? So even though you don't live with your parents, even though maybe you have limited contact with them, if you are below age 24, you will need to report their financial information. However, there are certain circumstances which would make students independent even though they haven't reached their 24th birthday. We'll go into that a little bit more in a couple of other screens, but this is setting up that conversation. Are you a foster youth, or at any time were you in the foster care system? You say, nope, Luke is living with his family. All right, so demographic information about parents. It doesn't matter who parent 1 is or parent 2 is, it does not make a single bit of difference. So we're going to say for parent 1, college or beyond, and parent 2, college or beyond. Okay, let's save. All right, so this way we don't have to go back and redo all the work we've just done. Okay, so we're going to put in here that Luke attends Riverhead High School, and his high school is in Riverhead, and that's in New York, and we're going to confirm that. Okay, so we're going to select this one, and we're going to say, okay, yep, that's the one, and go to next. All right, do you know your college's federal school code? All right, you have the opportunity to put 10 colleges in the FAFSA. So that would mean that your information would arrive at 10 different colleges for consideration for a financial aid package at those particular schools. So you can do this one of two ways, all right? You can search for the federal school code. You can do it ahead of time. So let's say you sit down with, the computer and you just type in various schools. All you have to do is type in Google, Hofstra federal school code, and it'll come up. So you can do it that way, or you can do the search through the FAFSA application if you wish. Up to you. I actually know our federal school code, so we're just going to put that in. It's typically 6 digits long. So I'm going to do the search. I'm going to say, oh, yep, that's the one. So Eastern Campus of Suffolk Community College. So we'll click that and say, yep, here's where you would add more schools. So as I said, if you wanted to sort of be prepared and have all the federal school codes in, you could just kind of punch all the numbers in, and this will go rather quickly. So for each school that you are selecting, they are going to ask you, what are your housing plans? Now, in the case of Suffolk, there are no dorms. So, and in the case of Luke, he's going to be living with parent. Now, if Luke were an older student, if he were an adult student or returning student, he might click off campus. But for him, in his circumstance, he's going to be living with his parent. Okay, now we're still at student information. So as of today, what is your marital status of the student? So we're going to say, well, Luke is single. Okay. Here's those dependency questions coming back again. Do you have or will you have children who will receive more than half of their support from you between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th of 2022? So we're going to say, no, Luke does not have any children. Does Luke have anybody else that rely on him for their financial support? Saying, nope, no, not at all. I worked with a student this past year, as a matter of fact, her mother is her dependent. So she is under age 24. However, she supports her mother. So she would be considered an independent student based on that criteria. These are the bulk of the dependency status questions, all right? Are you currently serving in the military for purposes other than training? Are you a veteran of the armed forces? At any time since you turned age 13, were both your parents deceased? Were you in foster care? Were you a dependent or a ward of the court? As determined by a court in your state of legal residence, are you or were you an emancipated minor? In New York State, the designation, I don't think the designation emancipated minor exists. Does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you, as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? That's an important one to look at more closely. If a student is living with their grandparents, they may have custody documentation, or they may say, oh, you know, my aunt has custody of me. That is not the same legal designation as legal guardianship. Those are two separate entities. So if you have documentation that says legal guardianship, you are automatically considered an independent student, all right? Custody, you may still be considered an independent student, but the custody paperwork alone does not automatically make you independent. We may have to go through a little bit more documentation in order to make you independent. So, a word here about dependency status. As you can see, there are very nice, neat little categories that are identified as potentially making a student independent. Not everybody fits nicely into these nice, neat little categories. So sometimes there's situations where the student does not have contact with the parents. There might not be legal formal documentation around that, but we would still be able to assist that student to get the financial aid that they'd be entitled to and make them independent. That's the kind of thing that you would want to approach the financial aid office about and say, you know, I do have some extenuating circumstances, but I can't really answer these questions in the affirmative. None of these things really fit my situation, but I still don't have contact with my parents, okay? As I said, come and see a financial aid person. I am so sorry that my voice is not good tonight. Okay. So for Luke, we're just going to say none of the above here. All right, and we're going to go to next. On or after July 1st, 2020, were you homeless? Were you self-supporting or at risk of being homeless? Again, this is kind of the last of the dependency status questions. So we're going to say, nope, not homeless. So here they're taking a pause and they're saying, based on what you've told us so far, we are making the determination that you are going to be able to provide parental information, that you are not an independent student. However, like I said, if you didn't fit nicely and neatly into those other categories, you do have the option of saying, I'm unable to provide parental information. And this is where the special circumstance information would come in. Please come and see a financial aid professional. However, for Luke, we're going to say, yeah, he is going to provide parental information. Okay, important note here, the banner has changed. We are now starting to look at parental information. Okay, so as of today, what is the marital status of your parents? This screen has the potential to, you know, a lot of times this question is answered incorrectly. So let's say, for the sake of argument, I'm a student and my parents are divorced. and I am living with my mother and my stepfather. And my mother and my stepfather are married. When I read this question, as of today, what is the marital status of your parents? I might answer, well, my parents are divorced. That's not the intent of the question. The intent of the question is the people with whom you live 50% or more of the time are considered your parents. So if you live with your mother and your stepfather, then your parents are married. So as I said, it has the potential to trip people up because while you're answering the question accurately, right? What's the marital status of your parents? And I said, well, my parents are divorced. That's not the intent. They're asking about with whom are you living? If you're living 50% or more of the time with those folks are your parents. So in the case of Luke, we're just going to say that his parents are divorced. All right. He's going to live with his dad, right? So when did your parents become divorced or separated? So we're going to say they became divorced in 1998. Okay. Actually, let's do 2008. Okay. Which parent's information will be provided? So we're going to say dad, father's information. Now, if this were slightly different, now remember, we're going to be looking at data that's from 2019. When we get to the financial information, they're going to start asking questions about financial data from 2 years ago. FAFSA always works 2 years behind. So, of course, that presents a bunch of challenges for a number of reasons. But in this case, it presents a challenge because if parents were married in 2019, but today, as we are finishing up 2020, they are divorced or separated, their tax information might not be the same as what they're reporting as their marital status for today. So that could present a problem. So, and you would have to work with the financial aid office to resolve that. But for this, we're saying, okay, that Luke's parents were divorced in 2008, and we are going to report dad's information. Okay, so this is why it's good for parent and student to be together. Student might not know, well, when was the divorce? They might not know the father's social security number. So just gonna make up a social security number. Okay. And of course, Luke's father is Darth Vader. And Darth Vader's birth date is, let's see. And his email address. Again, talking about legal residence having to do with state, because it's not only the student's legal residence, it also has to do with the parent's legal residence. I worked with a student who lived in New York State. His father lives in Pennsylvania. So he was not eligible for TAP aid. Okay, so yes, we're gonna say that dad lived in New York for 5 years. Household size. Here again, this screen sometimes can be a little problematic and confusing for folks. So we're talking about the number of people in the household. So we've got Luke's father, Luke. Now, does Luke have any brothers or sisters? So the criteria here are your father's other children, even if they don't live with the father. if your father will provide more than half of their support from this period of time, or they can answer no to every dependency status question on the FAFSA. Typically, if you're under age 24 and living in the same household, you would be considered a dependent. So we do know that Luke does have one sibling, right? He has a sister. So we're just going to put that in there. She's the same age, but we're going to pretend that she's younger. Okay. Any other people in the household that live? Perhaps there's a grandparent. Perhaps there's an aunt or an uncle that live with the family. And the criteria is, does Luke's father provide more than half of their support? And will that continue from July 1st to June 30th, 2022? So we're going to say, no, nobody else lives in the household. Just Luke, his sister, and his father. So the household size is 3. How many people will be in college? So we're going to say only 1. Now, for the sake of argument, if Luke's dad was attending college, we would not count him, okay? Because Luke is dependent on his dad. Luke's dad is not dependent on Luke for his upkeep, so to speak, okay? So it only goes that one way. Okay, so we're still here at parent information. Has your father completed the IRS tax return for 2019? So we're going to say, yep, he did. Already completed. What type of tax return did he file? So that's going to be right at the top of your tax return. So we're going to say it's the IRS 1040. What was his tax filing status? So we're going to say he was head of household. Here is where you have the opportunity to use the Irs Data Retrieval tool. Again, wonderful if you can use it. Really, it'll make this go much more quickly. You don't have to sit around, plug in numbers and you know, do a little bit of math here and there. It's just easy. It streamlines the process dramatically. But unfortunately, since Luke and his father are not real people, we will not have the opportunity to do that. So we're going to do it the other way. So we're going to say next we can do it. And we're going to have to decline the data retrieval tool. Okay, so we're going to be looking now at the IRS 1040. And what was dad's adjusted gross income for 2019? So we're going to say dad made $39,000 in 2019. Now, again, this is going to tell you immediately where to look to find the information that they're asking about. So we're going to go to IRS 1040, line 8B. How much did your father earn from working? Which would be wages, salaries, and tips. This information would be found on the W-2. Or you can do the math here and figure out that amount of whatever the amount is following the instructions. So we're going to say that his adjusted gross was 37. Did Luke's father file a Schedule 1? So Schedule 1 is typically for unemployment compensation, other kind of educator expenses, IRA deductions, student loan interest deductions. So there's a link here where you can click for more information. The Schedule 1 is typically like the 3rd page in a IRS 1040 tax return. So it would be right there, right up front. You could say no or don't know. We're going to say no here, okay, because he didn't get any of those things. We're going to just continue. So now they want to know, okay, well, how much did he pay in income tax in 2019? Right? So you would do the math here and figure out how much he paid. So we're going to say he paid $4,000 in income tax. Let's save. Okay. This particular screen has a lot of questions. The first one is having to do with combat pay. Often people who are completing the FAFSA will inadvertently, accidentally repeat their adjusted gross income in the combat pay section. If you do that, of course, a correction would need to be made. And just a word to the wise, every time you make a correction to your FAFSA, it could take up to 2 weeks to process because the FAFSA is not like other kind of online things that people use or are used to, where you instantly get, you know, your code or things happen instantly. It's not like that. It has to go through the Social Security Administration. It has to go through the Department of Homeland Security. It has to go through all kinds of other government agencies for verification. So that's why it can take up to 2 weeks to make any correction. So you want to make sure it's as accurate as possible the first time through, because sometimes corrections, as I said, take time. Sometimes if you're like running a little bit behind and your bill is due for your tuition payment and your financial aid is not in order, you might run into some problems. So I recommend that you obviously do it as early as possible, as well as, you know, pay particular attention to the questions. So you don't want to repeat the information here. Combat pay obviously has got to do with people who are in the military. So we're going to say no, 0 to that. Student college grant and scholarship aid reported to the IRS in your father's income as so this would be AmeriCorps or grants and scholarships. So we'll say no, dad was not in the military. I mean, not in college. Education credits, and it tells you exactly where to look to find out whether or not this pertains to you. Untaxed portion of IRA distributions and pensions. Again, it tells you exactly where to look. IRA deductions for SEP or simple or other KEO kinds of programs. Take a look there. It'll tell you whether or not that applies. Or any interest income from an IRS tax-exempt interest income. So we're going to leave all of that as zeros. Now, important to note, you want to look at those questions. They're going to come up again. Remember, we are still in parent information. We're going to need to answer all of these questions again when we get into student information. Child support your father paid because of a divorce or separation. So he didn't pay any child support. Did he get any earnings from a cooperative education program? No, didn't get any of that. How about taxable earnings from need-based employment, such as federal work study or fellowships or assistantships? Nope, none of that either. Did he receive any child support? Oh yeah, actually he did. He received $7,000 in child support in 2019. Did he pay any housing, food, or other living allowances to the military or clergy? Anything like that? We'll say, nope. How about any payments to tax-deferred pensions? Now this, you would need to take a look at the W-2 form, which is typically at the back of your IRS 1040 or your tax information. And again, it tells you exactly where to look in the various boxes. Veterans education benefits or disability, death pension, any of that? Nope. How about workman's comp or disability? Nope, none of that either. Okay, now, do you want to skip questions about your father's assets? FAFSA works on a thing called skip logic. That means that it's making decisions sort of behind the scenes as you go through the FAFSA to make some determinations about what kinds of questions you should be answering based on the answers you've already given. So at that income level, there's likely not a number of big assets in the family. So it's taking you down this particular kind of pathway. Now, an asset would be an asset is considered a second home, any kind of rental property, any kind of stocks or bonds or college savings plans, those are considered assets. Assets are not the house in which you live. So if you say no to this, what it's going to start asking you for is how much money does dad have in the bank? How about his investments, his real estate? How about his businesses or his family farm or anything like that? So if you say, yes, we can skip assets about they're making certain decisions on your FAFSA based on the questions you've already answered. So we're going to say, yeah, let's skip that. Okay, banner change. Now we are at student information. So we're back at student. So in 2019, did Luke work? Did he file taxes? So we're going to say, no, actually, in 2019, he didn't file any taxes. So obviously, we wouldn't be able to use the data retrieval tool because he didn't file with the IRS. We're going to go to next. Okay. Did he work? Did he have any kind of a job or anything? Yeah, actually, like he had a paper route and he worked at the local farm stand in the summer. And in 2019, we'll say he made $1,000. Okay, not enough to file, but he did make some money. So, yep. Okay, did he pay any child support? Well, no, he doesn't have any children. Did he have any money from a cooperative education program? No. Did he have federal work study or any of those things that we already talked about with dad? No, none of that. Okay. Did he receive any child support? Well, he didn't. Dad did, but he didn't. Did he pay any housing, food, or other living allowances to the military or members of the clergy or anything like that? Nope. How about those tax deferred pensions or retirement savings? No, none of that. How about veterans non-education benefits? No, so all of those same questions that we answered for dad, right? The last one's a little different. The last one has to do with money that was received that's not reported anywhere else on this FAFSA. So we're going to say, no, none of that. He didn't have any of that. So we're going to continue. All right, so now, again, that's skip logic. Do we want to skip questions about Luke's assets? They're going to ask the same questions. How much does Luke have in the bank? How much does his farm is worth? How much are his businesses worth? So we're going to say he doesn't have any of that stuff. So we're going to say, yeah, we're going to skip questions about his assets. So we're nearing the end, actually. Are you a preparer? So no, we're not a preparer. So there are people out there who are paid to complete FAFSAs. You know, a couple of things I wanted to point out before we move on to the last screens. I started talking a little bit about the 2019 taxes and the sometimes confusion that can occur when, you know, in 2019, maybe parents were together or maybe a parent was still alive, and now in at the end of 2020, you know, that's not the case anymore. The same has to do with financial information, particularly now. So at this moment, we know there are a lot of people out there who are struggling, and their 2019 tax return might portray a picture that's not really accurate anymore. Like I said, perhaps someone lost a job, perhaps someone passed away, perhaps there was a divorce. So what you look like on paper in 2019 might not be your reality today. Maybe your reality is a lot different, a lot less money coming into the house. So therefore, it's unfair to base your financial aid eligibility on data that's 2 years old if it's no longer accurate. That's where a financial aid professional like myself can come in. You can speak to a financial aid person and let them know this is no longer accurate. Of course, there's a process that we have to go through. There's documentation that we would have to collect. And we can help you more accurately reflect what's going on today in your household with your finances, so that this way you would be eligible for the maximum amount of aid and be able to get the help that you need in order to complete college, go to college. So that's an important piece. The other part about being a preparer, there are a lot of unscrupulous and not so nice people out on the internet who, who might charge you. As Ms. Alomio said in the beginning of this program, the first word in FAFSA is free. You do not need to pay to file your FAFSA. So, and sometimes wild claims about, we can get you the most money and things like that. They might be wild claims. So you want to be cautious of that. If you have any questions or concerns, please just let us know. Let me know. I'll be happy to help you out. All right, so we're going to continue. This is just a giant list of all the answers that we just gave. So here's a chance for you to review, make sure all of the information is correct. Maybe you want to add a school. Maybe you want to take out a school. You want to take a look at all of these things, make sure that all of the information having to do with finances are correct, social security numbers are right, things like that. Parent social security numbers have to be correct as well, obviously, right? So you want to make sure all of those are right. And you're just going to go through. And now we're going to get to the sign and submit part. Now, with an Fsa ID and password, this will go really fast because it's already been registered. Everything's good. Unfortunately, since Luke and his dad are not real people, we're not going to be able to do that. So we're going to do it a different way. So we're going to go here, provide student signature. Now, this is just information that I recommend everybody read. So this is for the student. And once you're done taking a look at this and reading all of it, you're going to agree, and then you're going to go to next. All right, so here's where they're giving you another chance. Get that Fsa ID and password done here. It says create an Fsa ID. If you can't, then you're going to do other options to sign and submit. All right, so you're going to print a signature page. So we'll say, okay, print a signature page. Go to next. All right, so now remember, I told you parent and student have to have an Fsa ID and password. Parent and student must sign the FAFSA. All right, so now we're going to go to the parent's signature. All right, here's information that the parent needs to look at. So when you're ready, you've read this whole thing. When you are all ready to sign, to agree, you're going to agree. I'm sorry about that. And then go to next. Okay, again, parent, here's another chance. Do that Fsa ID. If you're unable to, other options to sign and submit, you're going to print a signature page. Okay, so this is how we print the signature page. I apologize for the voicemail in the background. Now, this is what the signature page looks like. So you want to read the following there. And then when you're ready, the student can sign and the parent can sign. All right. Now, there are two ways to do this. You can either sign this and then send it off yourself to this London, Kentucky address, or you can bring it to the financial aid office and we can help you do it. We can make a correction. Up to you. Now, one of the most important things here is that you want to definitely submit the FAFSA. If you just print out the signature page and you do not go back and submit without signatures, your FAFSA is not going to go anywhere. It won't process until the signatures are received at that London, Kentucky office, or that a financial aid person like myself will go in and make the correction. It won't process, but if you don't submit it, then it doesn't exist at all in their system. So you definitely want to submit it. Okay. So you want to do that, print the signature page and send it off. Okay. So now at the end of your FAFSA, once you've submitted, you will have the opportunity to go, and I'm not going to print this, but you will have the opportunity to go and do your TAP application. It will actually say there's going to be a last page, is going to be a confirmation page that they'll give you. and then you can go off and do your TAP application. So I'm just going to very quickly show you what the TAP application looks like. You're going to go to tapweb.org. Okay. So here's where you're going to start my application. Okay. Now you have to create, the student has to create a user ID and PIN and have last 4 digits of a social security number in order to get started. All right. Again, write that down. This here with the TAP application, the parent does not need to have an identity with a user ID and a PIN, only the student. But the parent will need to sign at the end. So I do not know, here you want to go here for click for first time users. And this is where you're going to create your PIN. You're going to take a look at all of this, read all of it, create your online identity. Oh, you have to accept the terms and conditions. Okay. And then you're going to put in all your information. Now, since you know, I don't have a real social security number for these people. I'm not going to be able to go any further with this, but it's not a hard application. It's not as intense. It will not ask as many questions as the FAFSA. You will need to use your IT 201 New York State tax return. So that's different than the 1040. It's usually all put together in the same kind of packet when you receive your tax information, or when you do your tax information. It's usually in the middle. You'll see it at the top. It'll say IT 201, and there'll be like a little icon with New York State. And that's what they're looking for when you create your TAP application. As I said, it's not nearly as intense. And it'll take 10 minutes to do, if that much. It's really quick. They don't move as quickly as FAFSA, so it might take you a little longer to hear back from them. FAFSA, you could typically hear back within 2 weeks. So I am going to head over, stop my share right now, and head over to the chat. And I wanted to see if there were any questions. I'm going to put my email in case people have questions, or they want to reach out to me in any way. Okay, so that's my email address. And I don't know if anybody has any other questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
A lot of parents in my years in guidance have asked if I'm not going to qualify for Pell or any federal aid or TAP or state aid because my income is too high. Why should I apply? Why should I complete the FAFSA? You might not be eligible for grant aid, but if you wish to get any kind of a student loan, that is also sort of run under the FAFSA process. So you would have to complete the FAFSA for that. There are 2 types of student loans. There's subsidized and unsubsidized. Subsidized student loan means that the federal government will pay the interest on your loan while you are in school. If you are if you are eligible for an unsubsidized loan, that means the federal government will not. It will be you who will pay the interest on your loan while you are in school. So by completing the FAFSA, that will make the determination as to whether or not you are eligible, or what percentage are you eligible for sub versus unsub. So that's a reason why. But if you're not interested in receiving, any kind of student loan or anything like that, then I can understand, saying, well, I don't wish to do student loans at all. So that would be the kind of the deciding factor. Okay, thank you. The other question that parents also tend to ask, are there any deadlines to complete the FAFSA? When is the latest that a person can file?
So believe it or not, for the 21-22 academic year, you can file in June of 2022 if you want. So I wouldn't recommend that you do that because you know, your bill is going to be due, tuition bills are going to be due. So a lot of times people want their financial aid available when their tuition is due. It's definitely preferable to do it sooner rather than later, particularly if you are selected for verification, because documents have to be obtained, corrections may have to be made. All of those things will delay the process. So there isn't really like a hard and fast deadline. The deadline would really be for the person themselves, because they might not want to pay the tuition out front and wait for the reimbursement to come back after they file their financial aid.
There is a question. I have an 11th grader. It sounds like these are the two key applications to fill out. When do we fill these applications out? So this is a parent of an 11th grade student.
Right, so then he or she would want to wait until October 1st of 2021. That is when, because then that student would be a senior, right? In the fall of 2021. Then they would be typically going to college in the fall of 2022. And that's when the 22-23 FAFSA will open using the 2020 financial data.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions?
Please feel free to reach out if you have questions or concerns, or you need like a little bit more help in terms of completing the FAFSA. I'll be happy to help you out.
Thank you.
Hello, I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, great. I have a child that's going to school, but I am his stepfather. I provide for him and his mother. So his father died like 2 years ago, and he was his mother was separated from his dad for quite some time. So so he's my step child. So could I fill out the application as his father, or what do I do in that case?
Are you and his mother married?
Yes, yes, we are.
So then you are his parents, and you would be participating in filling out his FAFSA. Okay,
so I will do it as his father?
Yes, absolutely. You are his father. According to you are his parent. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great, because I seen all this, you know, like the parent information, and I say, oh my God, so how am I going to do this? Because I am not his biological father.
Right, but since you and his mother are married and he lives with you, I'm kind of putting, I'm sort of saying this out loud. If it's different, let me know. But since you and his mother are married and he lives with you 50% or more of the time, you are considered his parent.
Great, thank you. That's what I wanted to know. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Great.
Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to make a quick announcement. If you can spread the word, we're also having a FAFSA completion workshop in Spanish next Tuesday, December 15th at 7. So we will be sending out the link as well. So just wanted to make that announcement as well. So I just wanted to thank Dawn Korb as well as Julie Van Nostrand for their expertise, their help, their presentation. You have their email address. You can ask questions pertaining to your specific, family situation or needs. You can also reach out to me. Again, Jeanette Alomia, Director of Guidance at jalomia@hufsd.edu. Thank you so much. It's been another great event of the year. Hang in there, be safe, be well, and we'll talk real soon. Happy holidays.
Yes, be safe, everybody. Be well.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.